Okay.
Hey, this is Clear Tonic. This is a submission of The Legend of the Mystical Ninja for Super Nintendo.
Are you
This is a
referring to
co-op
the talent
run
guys that went
performed
around
by
earlier?
me, Clear Tonic, and Countdown 42. So we used a RetroArch, which is an online emulator, to play Super Nintendo together. So Countdown and I don't live in the same area, so we were able to play this online. We did practice online, and we submitted this co-op submission by playing together. So this is us actively playing together. Obviously, when we're in person, we'll be able to play together, but we actually didn't really have any hang-ups using this the emulator system. So, and we'll have no problem playing on console as well. It's exactly the same. But for purposes of the submission, yep, we were able to do this together co-op. So this is Mystical Ninja. This is a entry in the Goemon series. When they localized it for the Super Nintendo, they did not include Goemon's name. He's called like Kid Yang. And Ibisumaru is called Dr. Yang. But they are Goemon and Ibisumaru. This is the first entry of actually 4 on the Super Nintendo, but only this one was localized. And yeah, this is a side-scroller action platformer kind of game. There are these town segments in which we need to go around and do various tasks. But pretty much it's go to a new area, find the stage, beat the boss, progress onwards. Now, what's nice about this run is that there are benefits to actually playing with 2 players that speed things up as opposed to 1 player. So there are definitely elements of the 2-player interaction, such as some skips and some boss fights that actually are sped up. So it's not just like a 1-player game where you're happy to be playing as 2 players. But yeah, the first stage is pretty straightforward. You just sort of platform your way through. We'll talk about specific mechanics as we go along. Just notice that we're trying to collect money along the way. This first boss is pretty straightforward. You just need to ricochet the projectiles. And something that's kind of well known for people who have played this game is that the hitboxes in this game are fairly unforgiving, and sometimes your melee weapon is not as straightforward as it may seem. And in this game, you have a melee weapon, and then you also have a projectile, which is you can use your money to spend it on various items, health restoratives, armor, some things you have to buy in order to progress the game, but you can also spend 4 Rio, which is the money in this game, to launch a projectile. So first section down, like I said before, we're going to be monitoring the amount of money we have. Money is just incredibly important throughout this entire run. So we're going to stop at a store here. So there are these little shops that you can buy various things at. We need to stop at this first one because we get sandals and we get some pizza. It's actually onigiri in the Japanese version, but it's pizza here. So the sandals allow you to move faster. However, when you're in these town segments, if you get hit by an enemy, you will lose a sandal. So you can get up to 3 sandals, which gives you up to level 3 speed, and you can just see already, you walk much, much faster. So we're done with this first area. We need to go take the boat over.
Frickin' fish guy.
So,
I knew it was
like I
bad.
said, the way this game kind of works is that you'll go from area to area, and we are doing our best to preserve our HP and our lives throughout this entire game. Now, going into this run, we knew that perhaps we would need to take a game over to be able to more fluidly just finish the run. I believe in this run we didn't have to take a game over, which is certainly the fastest method of getting through the game. But you'll see as you go through that both HP and lives are a real concern. The reason that lives or specifically HP is so difficult to manage is that you don't get random health drops from enemies. You really have to maintain your health. The only real way to restore your HP is to either get a golden cat, which is a rare pot loot, I guess, which is where, if you watch Goemon right here, this is actually what he gets. Or you need to go to a shop and spend money to restore your HP. Even after a stage is over, you don't get your HP restored, so you really have to be careful about this throughout this entire game. So in this run, we've decided not to play the lottery. There's kind of this standard task of this game where you typically go and play the lottery and you bet 100 Rio and you have a chance of getting like over 1,000 payout, or you can just repeatedly lose your money and lose everything. So for the purposes of the run and specifically for marathon safety, we're not doing the gambling route. And we just kind of maintain and monitor our money throughout the run, just to make sure that we can get through it. Okay, this is the first boss. So this is a kind of like a chandelier guy. He's got all of these kind of orbs you need to take down. Clearly Japanese themed. But yeah, the idea is that you need to take out the white orbs first, and then you need to take out the red orbs. And they kind of have these like mysterious ways of moving around. So you're doing your best to kind of mitigate the field. So you can mitigate kind of what's going on and all of these projectiles all over the place. But really, the idea is that you need to get rid of all the orbs first, and then you can hit the boss in the middle. So it's a little bit of a chaotic fight, especially as he starts jumping. You can't really keep up with his speed, so you have to cleverly place yourself somewhere that's safe. Now, you saw there quickly, and you may have seen it on the previous boss, and you may see it on bosses from here on out, is that if two players, if they hit their projectiles at the exact same time, effectively it counts as a double hit, and it'll do twice the amount of damage. So it's a really cool mechanic of two players being able to sync up and work together to get effectively critical hits, and it doesn't double the invincibility frame window, so it's just pure benefit to be able to hit at the same time. Okay, heading into the next section after this. So right as we go along, there are subtleties about the way this game works that will kind of pop up in each section. So we're going to I believe it's Karakuri Island, as it's called. The idea is we're going to take this bridge over, and we're going to be doing a fairly large two-player exclusive skip coming up. Now, normally when you get to this section coming up, you need to do you need to go over this bridge, and it's not a terribly long bridge, but you'll see in this run that we're able to skip it. Now, there are some backups, not backups, there are some money drops that are invisible, but they're there. So we're going to be picking them up. Again, money is very valuable. So here we go. Here's the skip. So, let's just watch it first. Okay, so when one player holds A, it means that one player and two player can go to the very edges of the screen. So basically what happens is that the game gets confused and it sets the flag of where the next entrance is, sort of in a previously unaccessible location. So basically what it means is that you're able to effectively wrong warp and get past an area. You have to be in the same area, so it's not quite a wrong warp, but it's basically like a level skip. And we're going to be seeing that throughout the run, that there are these tiny skips here and there. Well, some of them are not so tiny. Like that one isn't too much, but in the next dungeon coming up, there's actually a huge one, and then the dungeon afterwards. So what you saw here is that you go into this like shed area. We see Abyss get a golden cat. I didn't mention, I'm sorry, I'm kind of backtracking. The golden cat not only restores your HP, but also gives you 2 more life. So that's why Abyss has more life right now. Right, so I was talking about the shed area before. There are some secrets similar to how there were those invisible items where we picked up the 100 Rio before. There are also these hidden areas that are sort of like
Is this the dungeon you're talking about?
passages that transport you around.
Okay. Tell me where.
So we're able to take those and get some extra money, and they happen to put us in a location that is favorable for where we're trying to go to. I think we had some backtracking here real quick, but basically there was a golden cat that we had one player go hit up because it was beneficial because he took some damage. Unfortunately, Abyss takes some damage here because there was some chaos with the enemies. But still, the idea is that The golden cats are great for restoring your HP, but then also gives you a little bit more safety too. So that one wasn't. It's basically like not really out of the way. That's it. And that's what most of the cats are that we get. So move along in this section. This is a little bit scary. This is kind of where the game picks up a little bit. Some of the platforming here is a little bit more dangerous. We came up with a fairly safe way to get through this last real screen with the rotating spikes. So we effectively deboost off the first spike, which only does 2 damage, and then we're fairly safe from there. You might take another hit as you go along, but if you can just tank your way through, it's a lot safer than trying to deal with these enemies. Those rolling enemies have 4 health points, so it's pretty scary.
Darn.
Alright, coming up we have another one of these skips. So watch as the edges of the screen, they both go to the edge, and then bam. So what's happening is that all the way up on the top left of where, straight up from where Abyss Maru was, there's an exit there. So the game gets confused and kind of just like relocates that top exit right to where he is. So we happen to get hearts here, which is super lucky and really, really nice. This is sort of like a lottery, and that sometimes you can get good stuff, sometimes you get bad stuff. Alright, this boss has like 5 different phases. Has this first phase, you have to take out the sumo guys, and then you have to take out the mask. And this is a boss where we can try to get double hits, but given that we're trying to save money as well, we have a tendency to play it a little bit safe and space out our Rio throws. But the idea is that he'll break down, kind of like Mr. Potato Head, and come back together. And each time he comes back, it gets a little bit scarier and scarier. But it's a pretty straightforward fight. We just gotta keep our distance and try to space out our hits so that we can reliably take him down. Then the last phase is kind of where he stretches more and more and more until he takes up the whole screen. It's typically not too dangerous. You might take a hit or 2 along the way, especially in the last section. Yep, just like that. But not too bad. Fairly straightforward boss fight. And moving on. Sorry, one of the hits. Alright, the next stage is kind of where we see slightly more dangerous even than the last one. And this is kind of the turning point in which the next few stages are really kind of tough.
Right.
So we have a outside section, and this is where the outside enemies definitely start to pick up. There are different types of enemies throughout this game, clearly as you can see, but they also come with very different projectiles. And these guys with the carts and the kids in the cart, they're actually really scary. And I said this before, I believe, but some of the hitboxes in this game are very, very weird and unforgiving. It's very subtle tech that if you move in a diagonal and you jump, it's slightly faster. So we try to squeeze them in, but they can also put you in a bad position, so... Take out the ninja guys, they throw out bombs, and we get through. Okay, this is one of the scarier parts of the game. It's fairly brief, and then we're going to do another scroll skip, but some of the platforming here is kind of rough. We do this technique where Abyss will hang out a little bit before Goemon, because the idea is that only one person needs to actually be ahead to scroll the screen. So we do some spacing out just to make sure that enemies will spawn when Goemon shows up, and then Abyss can aim and shoot. So here, there's spikes coming down. We're waiting there for a second just to make sure that the cycle is correct so that Goemon can make it over. You're still thwarted by the third spike coming down. You have to wait a little bit. But once you get to that point, once Goemon gets on the right, we can execute a scroll skip. And this saves a huge amount of time. Probably like a minute and a half of just straight up platforming. So it's a really, really nice skip. And you go straight to the boss. So that's super cool. And the skips are actually fairly simple to pull off. They're a lot more simple than they may seem. Alright, Sasuke, if you remember him, if you played from the 64 game. The ninja robot. He's a little bit scary. He kind of bounces all over the place, and he does, I think, 3 damage to you. The bosses do more and more hearts to you as you go along, so it gets scarier and scarier for sure. But he's not too bad. He's fairly easy to hit, even though he kind of bounces all over the place.
Yeah. 2 lives is nice.
And we're moving on. The wise man is going to launch us in his cannon.
And pizza?
And pizza. Hell yeah, dude. We're fat right now. This is
Alright, getting into this next section here.
Not the water stage yet.
Yep. So this is a huge skip as well. So we're going to do a scroll script similar to before. In this run we picked up some armor. But we're going to do a scroll skip, and that is going to allow us to bypass having to get what's called the pass. So typically when you play this game, one character needs to have a 980, that's right, 980 Rio purchased to be able to make it through this part of the game. But if you do this scroll script, you're able to just straight up bypass it. So it's a huge, huge save. Because you'd have to grind, you'd have to go get backup money, it'd be a real nightmare. But instead, we're able to spend the money on some armor, and we try to make it our way through. Alright, so we're in the park section now. The park is actually really, really scary. So we go piggyback so that Abyss can focus on trying to gun these enemies down. Now, the problem is that Abyss only has so much Rio, and whenever Goemon walks into an enemy, it doesn't go to Abyss any potential Rio drops. They go straight to Goemon, so it's tough. It's tough to keep up your Rio, but luckily we had just enough to squeeze by, which is good. And then we're going to progress towards the boss. Alright, so this boss, well, we do a scroll skip, and that's another big skip. Again, the exit is all the way in the top left. So we can just scroll all the way up. And yeah, this boss is very much a scary boss. He has an enormous hitbox, so you have to be really, really careful. Now, this guy has 2 phases, and the first phase you just need to gun down the box, and then the Kabuki fighter kind of shows up next, and he is a massive guy. So he certainly, like, he takes up a large part of the screen. If he stomps on you, it does 4 damage. So luckily, we both have our armor taken, but that's sort of like the regular fight where we take the most damage. So we saved our way through, but yeah, luckily we were able to make it through without too many problems. So once you get through the park segment, the river, as long as you have enough to tank at least like 1 life, you should be fairly safe to the river. The river is one of those stages where it should be relatively simple, but in the first part of the screen, when you get to the platforming section, there's some very rough eagles that can really hinder your progress, because they drop bombs, and the hitboxes are all messed up because their projectile can tank hits instead of them, and you just have to be a little bit safe. So all along, you kind of consider whether or not you need to game over to kind of get back to 2 lives and start fresh. But luckily, we did not have to do that. Or rather, you shouldn't have to do that. But, you know, if you have to, you have to.
I didn't realize that until last night.
So this is a little bit of a scary section. Whenever you're in the water here, you see a golden cat. Yeah, so whenever you're in the water, you actually take damage. And not only do you take damage, but you also will lose your power up. I guess that's something I didn't mention before. If you take damage at all, you can get knocked down on the power level. I guess I didn't explain this either. So whenever you get one of those silver fortune cats, you actually will get a power up to your weapon. So you can get a level 2 and level 3 power up to your melee weapon. But if you take a hit, then you'll get knocked down a level, and the water counts as getting knocked down a level. So once you get about halfway through the stage, there's 2 golden cats, which really helps out your survivability. And through this boss, you really do want to try to get some Rio for the fight, because he's a boss that will go down much quicker if you have the appropriate Rio. So we have a decent amount. We should be able to take him down, but sometimes you just have to melee him too. So yeah, so it's a dragon. He's mostly out of reach, but if you do have distance throwing ability, you should be able to take him down without too much problems.
I completely forgot about the whole, like, I can use melee as well as Rio.
That's fine. I guess we do have to be on the right side, yeah. Yeah, so nothing too major. We get through
So
that last section. We're getting now into the second to last section. So 2 more stages, 2 more areas, 2 more stages. So this is definitely the longest stretch, and you really need to consider whether or not you need to game over. If you have 2 lives, you can kind of keep going, and you're going to get some golden cats. You have to consider how many sandals you have, because at least one character needs to collect 980 Rio, and that character needs to have triple sandals to be able to clear the jumps. So it really depends on your setup whether or not you have to do a grind or not. But yeah, the idea here is that it's pretty straightforward. You just need to go through these 3 underground areas, and they're going to both give you some golden cats, but then they're also going to give you a lot of money as well. So these are like subtle secrets. They're not super secretive, but yeah, little hidden passages that will add up to your ability to afford the 980 burgers. So the 980 that I'm talking about is the I think it's called the text. Yeah, so it's like a dictionary. The locals in the town, including the king, speak in this foreign language, and the only way that you can talk to them is by buying this 980 Rio item. So yeah, you make your way through this section. It takes a little bit of time, but you'll see in a second that once you do some farming, it pales in comparison to how much it takes to farm all of this stuff, all of this money. And again, like, we're trying to preserve our HP through this section, so there are these hammer throwing guys, and they are the worst, probably the worst, like, regular spawning enemy. Their hammer is just, they move in mysterious ways. So you come over, do some final grinding. Nothing too time intensive. The one thing to note about the grind is that most enemies will drop 10 Rio, so you typically get 10 at a time. If you have a fully upgraded weapon and you get another silver fortune cat, that'll give you 10 Rio as well. And then finally, there will be random girls that walk on the screen. If you walk into them, you'll get 50 Rio, but if you hit them, you'll get minus 100. So it's really, like, it's really good to see them, but it's also really bad if you don't walk into them. I'm sorry, if you hit them instead. So we get 980 eventually, and then we're gonna walk in, buy the text, and the grind is over.
I think I should be the one.
Okay, so
I should be the one that's
once you get the text, all you need to do is go talk to the king real quick. But thankfully, the game doesn't actually check whether or not you talk to the king. It just checked that you got close enough to him. So if you scroll the screen and get within his, like, a specific distance from his rug, you can just turn around. So that's what we do. So, basically the king is supposed to tell you that there's this secret entrance over here to where the bad guys are. So he tells you to go to the second statue on the left, and then you go. And unfortunately, you can't access this just by smashing it open. You have to have done all of that. Got the text, talked to the king, or I guess triggered the cutscene with the king, but not actually watch it. Okay, so this section is kind of definitely one of the more challenging parts of the game. I think we get tripped up a little bit in the next section, maybe. But the idea is that this is a really long segment. You really want to preserve your lives and HP. So if you die here and there, it's like, it gets into really sketchy territory. Because if you were to game over in this stage, you would have to do all of the grinding and all of getting the text all over again. So it's really bad. So unfortunately, yeah, sometimes things just like don't go as planned, and this screen can get very laggy, and you really just have to like be super careful. But eventually you get through. Yeah, and then coming up after this, we have a brief auto-scroller segment. What we need to do here is farm a little bit and just make sure that we have some Rio. We really do want to have Rio on both characters just a little bit throughout the rest of the game. And we've spent the most of what we need. Or we've collected the most of what we needed for most Rio. But it is really helpful even through the final stretch of the game to try to maintain some Rio. It's just so useful to have it, to be able to throw it against long distance enemies. So yeah, getting to this next section. These hammer throwing guys are not nearly as bad as the ones on the overworld because they're hammers throwing similar arcs every time, as opposed to the overworld. You just do some clever sort of placement to make sure that you don't bonk into these guys, and there are instances in which you need to slow down and wait for both characters to be together to make a jump, and you see that a lot over those hammer brothers. I'm gonna like that only one of us. Okay, so this guy, he's the lifesavers boss, as most people call him. So what this guy does is you have to climb up his little platforms, and then you have to juggle him back and forth. So it's pretty basic, but it is a little scary too. Because if you have two players trying to hit him at the same time, he can get on these kind of weird cycles where he starts like ricocheting back and forth. But what's nice about two players is that optimally you're able to hit him at the same time and do double damage. But it can get really scary that way too. Okay, this is one of the scarier parts of the game, just because this is prone to having deaths everywhere. So there's this little conveyor section here in which you just need to hop from one platform to the next and then do some ducking. But the problem really isn't the platforming, it's the syncing up with your co-op partner to make sure that you don't interact with each other. Now, when you're ducking and your partner jumps on you, that will initiate a piggyback. So you want to do it at the end, right before you get to this next section, because it's much easier to platform together, especially with the way these platforms work. But it can get really, really tricky if you're not like communicating well with your partner. Luckily, we get through this. We have a tough jump here. It's a very tight window to be able to make some of these jumps, but you know, it does save a lot of time if you go for it, and it's not terribly risky if you fall down. You can usually manage your way back up. And we get to this final section. So the boss here is from the lifesavers fight before.
Go.
Alright, definitely be careful. And what you need to do against this next boss is you need to sort of like rotate him through momentum off the side of the screen. And you have to really do like a quick 1-2 to get him. And if you hit him the wrong way, he kind of just sits there. And those spikes that are on his hands will do a lot of damage to you, and they can knock you off and one-shot you. So you really got to be careful. But he's not too bad, honestly. Excellent.
Oof.
Alright, so we're getting into the final stage here.
That's great.
Find out that it wasn't these guys all along. Or these weren't the guys that you thought they were all along. Turns out they're bad guys too.
What are we at?
The Great Hanya
like
Shogun.
A little less than full health.
So when we get to this next section, we're going to be placed in jail. And then what we need to do is
That's what I meant by two.
go find, I think it's the real king. I'm not 100% sure. I think it's the real king. You find him, he tells you that your jail cell actually had a passageway out, and then you can leave. Now there is a skip you can do if you have 3 sandals, meaning that one of your characters has a long distance jump that you can do another scroll glitch that we haven't seen in a little while. And if it gets hazy early on, we can take the game over. But the idea here is that we just need to go talk to this guy, and then we're going to come back to the jail cell, and then we're getting into the final stage. It is nice.
Wow.
Yep, so another 2 major here. We're just trekking back. We can collect some money along the way, that's cool, but the idea is that at least one character should have some Rio, so it's really nice. We decided, well, I guess every time you have to decide whether or not you want to take a game over, and it really just depends on how much money people have and how many lives you have. So we're going. This is the final stage. This is definitely chaotic. These milk thrower guys, they kind of have these like small little milk jugs they throw at you. They are terrifying. They can really do a lot of damage to you. And there are many of them that spawn on the screen. But luckily there are 3 golden cats that are very easily accessible through this area, so we'll be able to kind of mitigate our HP damage given that we don't die. And yeah, we do a lot of like volleying where one player sets up another player to get the golden cat. So you see that here. Moving forward, we got one more golden cat coming up after this, but we're trying to get through. You can just see how chaotic it really can get. Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, sometimes, you know, you take a lot of damage. So with Ye, if Abyss is walking in front of Goemon just with the right amount of distance, for whatever reason, Ye just doesn't talk to you and the text box skips. Otherwise, she would talk to you, and it's not a lot of time, but it's probably like 10 seconds of her talking to you, so you just skip it. Come up here.
That's a golden cat.
This section's a little scary, but you know, with some deft platforming, you make it up. Some of the clouds dissipate, so some of the other ones are on a cycle. And once we get up here, we're going into the final boss rush. Okay, final boss rush. So we need to do 2 refights. You remember these bosses from before. They are pretty much the same as before. This guy, actually both of them have slightly different color palettes, which is kind of cool. But it doesn't really mean anything. They pretty much do the same thing. But even though this was a boss from earlier in the game, I guess the way this game works and scales is that, like, this boss isn't really any easier than it was before. And it was kind of challenging before, too. The orbs do 4 damage to you, which is really scary. So, at this point, we really wanted to finish this run, so we're doing our best to kind of keep it together. And not take too many deaths and try not to get hit. But, you know, sometimes it happens, and you just, like, you take unfortunate amounts of hits. So. But at the same point, like, you do want to play aggressively, too, and you don't want to take forever, so it's that sweet spot. Okay. So, yeah, getting through this section. So this is another refight. Same as before. You can see here that I don't have too much on the money front, and unfortunately we lost player 1 along the way.
I hate that boss.
So the fight would be a little bit faster for both this fight and the next fight if we had both players, but at this point we really just wanted to finish this run, so this was me playing and I just wanted to play pretty safe. And this is kind of exemplary of what could happen. Like, you might lose 2 players at some point. And if it was in the middle of a stage throughout the game, you could probably just get to the next area, game over, and then you would both be back together. Whenever you game over, you lose all your money, but that's really it. But, you know, this is the final stretch of the game, so we really just wanted to get through without too many problems. So we get through that guy, go to the final boss. So this boss has 2 phases. The first phase, he has his this big like shogun guy on his, I don't even know what that is. It's like a lion dog. The idea is that you just need to ricochet his arrows into his pet. If you hit too low, he'll deflect it. If he hits too high, it'll just bounce off of the guy's armor. So just do this a bunch of the times. It does get scary if he moves all the way to the left, because then you'll start being unable to hit the arrows back. Alright, so fair warning, I play this, especially after I get hit for the first time, I play this very, very, very safe. And you can see that all the way in the corner you have some safe zone, which is super nice. But the idea is that this guy gives you a fairly simple pattern, and that once he goes up, he'll always come down in the same location, and you can guarantee some hits. Now, if you're playing aggressively, you have more hearts or you have more lives, you can definitely like get up in his face and hit him, even when he's bouncing around like this. But for purposes of finishing this run, we definitely just wanted to, you know, play it safe, and it kind of showcases what could happen. There are safety measures to be able to close out runs for both 1-player and 2-player, just like this. But you definitely benefit from having some extra either health or lives or 2 players to speed things up. So, you know, for this, again, could be a little faster, but being able to just secure victory and know that you can go into the final boss and be 1 hit away from losing everything, be able to do it consistently is a good thing too. So, we're almost there, getting through this fight. Just playing it safe. You could turn around and try to score some hits, but you also risk getting hit, and that would be tragic. Because game over in here is probably like 6 minutes gone, at least. And that's it. Once you hit that guy, you go to the final cutscene. Unfortunately, if only 1 player made it, then the other player doesn't show up for the ending, which is too bad. But yeah, that's the run. It's a super cool run. You get to see 2 players working together, do some very interesting skips, and yeah, bosses definitely do go faster if you have 2 players. And it's also like a challenging run, right? It's not something that it's like all the backups and safeties are gonna make it an easy experience. You really do have to play well and work together, and I think it's a great co-op run. It's a great game too. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and yeah, hope you enjoyed. Just like getting a cleanish run in is all we needed.
Yeah. We could certainly spend some time tonight trying to get another one in if you'd like.
Yeah, that'd be cool. But even just having something on paper is like, that's awesome. So cool.
Yeah, it feels like we don't have to stress about it now.
Yeah. I was really stressed right now. I was just like, just finish.
Just finish. Submission. It's a shame because I'm not a part of the ending, only a BC. The legend.